Get your heist boots ready and dust off those rusty blowtorches because it's time to choose your partner in crime. This league start, Badger is bringing 3 tried and true, easy, solo self-found viable, insanely cheap and survivable build guides to you all for the price of literally nothing. Seriously, you don't have to pay for this. Leeches. Introducing the first build guide, Dot the Cold Shoulder. Welcome, it's your friendly neighbourhood Badger here, and I'm back with the first of my 3 build guides for League starting strong in Heist. Dot, the Cold Shoulder, specialises in slowing your enemies down astronomically, all while putting out very respectable damage over time on the slimmest budget imaginable. To prove this point, this build is showcased with solo self-found gear found during the hardcore solo self-found Gauntlet League, dropped and crafted on a level 70 character. So, the gameplay you are seeing is the bottom floor of the potential of this build, which means the path of building won't show omega lull levels of DPS, but if this can carry me to maps in a fully modded hardcore environment, I think it works pretty well. Ascendancy wise, we are choosing Occultist, not only for the mega cold damage over time this Ascendancy puts out and the curse synergy, but also because this Badger has a funny feeling Occultist is going to get some nice buffs come patch notes, due to the buffing of self-cast curses. Like all of my build guides before patch notes, these guides are subject to change when the patch notes come out, but are built in such a way that they are basically nerf proof. What this means is that you're very safe choosing this as a build guide. Before we do jump into this build, I would like to point out that there are a number of ways to play this build, be it Trickster, Self-Cast, Spellslinger, or with focusing on different skills, but with Dot the Cold Shoulder, we mainly focus on spell slinging with Creeping Frost. As always, there is a handy colour guide down below for you to jump between sections if you need to, so no need to worry about getting lost. However, without further ado, let's jump right into the build. First off, we will be looking at the budget gear and links of the Cold Slinger right here. Now, as you can see in front of me, and as you would have heard just before, all of this gear that you're seeing on this budget version is entirely solo self-found on a level 70 character. So basically all you're really going to be getting and seeing here is gear that is really easy to craft, basically on day 1 of a league. So we will start with the gear itself, and first of all we have this opal wand here. All it really has is spell damage and cold damage, but using Spellslinger, the other thing that you can chuck on here is some cold dot multi, or you can even get +1 to cold skills. Now it is very important that you don't actually get plus cold to spells on this wand, because what that's actually going to do is muck up your elemental equilibrium, which we will talk about a little bit later. So just make sure on the wand or anywhere else on your gear you don't have cold damage to spells, and apart from that you're going to be absolutely fine. This type of wand is quite easy to find or craft or something like that, and it's very trash as you can see there, but you know, it does the job for what we need in early maps. The shield itself, as you can see here, doesn't even have any spell damage, but it does have blocking spell damage, as well as a little bit of energy shield and some max life, and some crafted resistance. But all you really look for here is max life, crafted resistance, maybe some cold dot multi, and if you can get +1 to cold spells as well, that's really nice. For pretty much the rest of the gear, you're just looking for a helmet that just has, you know, good life and resistances, a chest piece that has good life and resistances, gloves and boots that have good life and resistances, and on the boots you want to get a good amount of move speed. I've only got crafted move speed on these ones, but you can definitely get, you know, 25% move speed on some boots very easily. And the ring, the amulet itself, again, just some life and cold res, which you really don't need. Now, the rings, as I said, they are, you know, the same. They're cold res or any sort of res and life, just to cap out all your reses. But as you can see here, we're very capped on all of our resistances. Now, there are a few uniques that you can use in this budget version, especially if you're on a trade league. They're going to be very easy to get on day 1 or just for a very small amount within the first few days. The first thing is the Malachi's Artifice Unset Ring. Now, socketing in a lightning or fire spell into this is going to mean that you're going to be able to put this down at a boss and get elemental equilibrium on that boss, which basically means -50 cold res to that boss, which is super nice for your damage. It's not really going to be helping you during mapping, but you do get a lump sum of lightning res there as well if you put a lightning res gem in, or a lump sum of fire res if you put fire res in there as well. Now, the second unique ring that you can get, which may be a little bit more expensive in the first couple of days of League, is a Snake Pit Sapphire ring. Now, this has to be in the left slot because we do want projectiles from spells fork. It does give you a little bit of spell damage and cast speed as well here, but what this is really great for is making your Creeping Frost fork through all of the enemies, especially if you're spell slinging with greater multiple projectiles. This is going to be just covering the entire screen in a cold dot on the ground. But that is pretty much it for the ring slots. This is pretty nice to use here, and you do see we are at still 5,793 life here. And then the helmet, we can also switch the helmet out for a Rhyme Gaze Mind Cage. Now you're going to have to cap a little bit more res with some other gear, but that should be quite easy. But Rhyme Gaze is one of the best in slot that you can use here. And it's giving concentrated effect to what you put in here, so you probably want to be putting in some sort of damage over time skill. And then you get increased cold damage there as well, plus cold damage over time multi, and a bit of mana to cap things out. It's a really nice helmet here, and you're going to be wanting to put one of your supplementing skills in there, probably your Cold Snap, which would be super nice. That is pretty much it for everything. The leather belt is, again, just life and resistances. That's all you're really looking for. On a Spellslinger like a Cold Dot Spellslinger, you don't need to focus too much on increased cooldown recovery speed on boots and belt, because you don't need to worry about that cap of attack speed. You're not going to be attacking as fast as something like VD Spellslinger. And then the flasks themselves, you're just looking at a good life flask. These flasks are actually really trash that I have here. A couple of really bad life flasks, a really bad Quicksilver, a Jade flask, and an Amethyst flask, but you can switch these around to any sort of flask that you like. The crazy thing is I only have bleeding on this flask here, and my Quicksilver doesn't even have adrenaline or anything like that, so it's all very bad gear there. And then lastly, we just have a couple of Cobalt Jewels, which are really small. They've just got 2 mods, just increased life and cold damage over time multi. You can be looking for spell damage or other things like that on these jewels, but that's all you really need there. Now that is the gear for the budget version, and the links that we're using for this version here, if we jump over to the skills themselves, go in this order, and we'll start with Spellslinger. So first of all, we have Spellslinger linked with Creeping Frost, which is your main skill, and then Hypothermia, Bone Chill, and Greater Multiple Projectiles. If you are going to be using a 6 link, it is probably best that you use Efficacy, which is really nice in a 6 link, and you still have enough unreserved mana there. And this obviously is in your body armor for a 5 or 6 link. We then have our Power Siphon, which is to proc all of our Spellslinger abilities with. Now, a lot of people do ask me, why are you using Power Siphon over Frenzy? I thought Frenzy was better for Spellslinger. For most Spellslingers, it is. But with this build, we are actually using Cold Snap, which does generate Frenzy charges for us. Plus, with Power Siphon, we get more projectiles to be able to curse on hit. As you can see here, we have 2 curses, Temp Chains and Frostbite. And it also has a built-in Culling Strike. So that's pretty much why we use Power Siphon over Frenzy for our procking of all of our Spellslinger abilities. But that's pretty much how that goes. That can go in any of your 4 links. We then have a Flame Dash linked with Steel Skin, and Second Wind and Arcane Surge. So the Steel Skin both procs Second Wind and Arcane Surge. Flame Dash procs Second Wind and Arcane Surge there. So it's a nice 4 link to have. And you can put Steel Skin on your left click, so as you're moving around, that's just going to keep you nice and healthy. As you can see here, the gems are not leveled up. That's because, as I said, a level 70 character had this gear on it, and that's pretty much it. Now, if we're using Malachai's Artifice, we do just want an Orb of Storms sitting in that ring. That's going to be able to proc our Elemental Equilibrium. Once again, make sure that you do not have any flat cold damage to spells anywhere else on your gear, otherwise this is going to stuff up the Elemental Equilibrium of Orb of Storms. If you do have flat damage to spells in other places, then you can actually put a golem in here, either a fire golem or lightning golem, and then that golem will proc the Elemental Equilibrium in the Malachai's Artifice, and that also means that your flat damage to spells is not going to be applied to the golem, which is actually a really interesting thing to think about. Then in another one of our 3 links, we've just got Frostbomb, and then Faster Casting and Spell Cascade. This is just super nice to be able to chuck a Frostbomb down on the ground and have it proc on bosses. And then in our Cold Snap, we have Spellslinger with Cold Snap, Control Destruction, and Efficacy. Now, a lot of people also ask me, why are you using Cold Snap? it doesn't bypass the cooldown of Cold Snap being in a Spellslinger. That's very true, but with efficacy and having Cold Snap here, the duration of Cold Snap is still going to basically go for the entire duration until you can proc a new one with the cooldown of Spellslinger, meaning that it's basically having 100% uptime Cold Snap without you even needing to cast it ever, and it still does a fair amount of damage there as well, which is pretty darn nice. So I'd very much consider using Cold Snap. Now I did play around a lot with Wintertide brand, but unfortunately the damage was really low, and without any sort of brand clusters for your brands to be able to jump between mobs, it's just not good at all. So Cold Snap is definitely the way to go here. That's it for the budget gear and links. If there's any questions at all, you can just consult the path of building down below, or you can come ask me on stream, or you can comment down below in this video. That's up to you. We are going to be jumping now to a variation of endgame gear and links. Now, there's so many different ways to play this Spellslinger build. Some other people like Balamage, and a few other people are playing different versions of this build, or trying different versions of this build, so you can check them out. And Big Ducks as well. But this is the version that I've gone with because it's extremely easy to gear and extremely easy to get going. If you want to jump from this budget version straight to the budget tree, you can do that now, just down below as well. Otherwise, we are going to move on to the endgame gear and links, which is going to be a Chaos Inoculation version of this build with some added differences as well. So let's jump over there right now. Welcome back. Now, the endgame version of this build is not something I particularly have spent as much time on, but it's something I wanted to give you guys, especially as a League starter, if you wanted to just move this build into something a little bit more powerful. Now, these items here may take a while to get, depending on how much you play the League and everything like that, and as I said, it is Chaos Inoculation, so there is going to be a period there of you transitioning to Chaos Inoculation. Now, when I say endgame, this is not min-maxed. This is just gear that is a lot better than what the original gear was on the character. And there are also some changes to the skills we are using, because with more investment allows us to have a little bit more change in the types of links that we are using, especially going CI. We can change a few things around, and actually Vortex is going to be our main damage on the endgame version of this build, but Creeping Frost is still there for a good amount of damage and clear. So let's have a look at the gear itself to begin with. First of all, the wand, we've just got some chaos damage over time multiplier and +1 to level of all skill gems, plus the trigger a socketed spell when you use a skill craft on this. Now this can obviously be much better, but it's something that may take a little bit to get within the first couple of days, but you know, it's still absolutely fine. The shield itself is a cold spell skill gems shield, just with some good fire and lightning there as well, and some energy shield. You want at least 200 energy shield on your shield. If you can get 250, that's even better. Now, the helmet stays the same because best in slot for this endgame version of the build is Rime Gaze. Now, it's going to be very difficult for you to get the Creeping Frost enchant on Mind Cage, or the Rime Gaze, but it's still going to be super nice for you to now actually have your Creeping Frost linked in this Rime Gaze right here. Moving on to the body armor, I just crafted a Var Regalia here with just under 600 energy shield. That's pretty much all you need. If you can go higher, that's totally fine as well, and you can add any other influence modifiers you want on there. One thing that would be super nice is probably going to be an explode chest, but honestly, that's nice on every single build. So if you wanted to make a Var Regalia that also had explode, be my guest. Moving to the gloves, gloves is another source that you can actually get cold damage over time multiplier. So cold damage over time multiplier with the gloves is really nice, and you want at least 100 energy shield on this, perhaps even more, and some resistance if you can cap that there. And that is on Hunter gloves, the cold damage over time multi. Boots themselves, you just get some good movement speed and some energy shield. 150 is super nice with a high move speed roll, and some res on there as well, which is going to be super nice. But then moving to the amulet. We've got this amulet here that I did actually craft in Harvest League, but it's going to be a lot harder to craft outside of Harvest League. So don't be looking at this and go, oh, this is going to be easy to do. This is going to be a lot harder to do in Heist League coming up, because we do have the cold skill gems and intelligent skill gems, which you can awaken orb together on a Hunter Redeemer, but then you're also going to need to get cold damage over time and max energy shield on there as well, which is going to be very difficult. What I would actually suggest is just doing one of the either cold skill gems or intelligent skill gems, and then crafting around that, getting cold damage over time multi and energy shield and everything like that as well. That's probably the best way to go about this. Now, the command of steel on there is not specifically the allocation that is, the perfect type of allocation for any sort of anointment, but you can choose your anointment if you want. And in the passive skill tree section, we're going to go over anointments quickly as well, just to tell you what may be a good choice. Then in ring 1, in your left ring slot, Snake Pit is best in slot here because we get greater multiple projectiles from the massive clear of our Creeping Frost. And then we've got that also helps our Frostbolt to fork here as well, which is really interesting. We'll get to that in a moment. We will be using Frostbolt in this version of the build. The other ring is just going to be having good energy shield on it. I did have non-channeling skills have -8 to total mana cost, which helps our spell slinging like absolutely crazy. And then we also have just a crystal belt here, which is, pretty nice. You just get as high energy shield flat as you can, and % increased energy shield. And I also have increased energy shield recovery rate from a Crusader modifier right there. That's pretty much it right there for all of the items. You can switch things around again. I said this is endgame, but not min-maxed at all. There's still a lot to go here, and it does end up with around 7,400 energy shield without using Discipline. We then move on to the Quartz Flask of Curing. We've got a Jade Flask of Reflexes, a Silver Flask of Warding, although this Silver Flask of Warding is actually best if you switch that out for a Quicksilver. And then I just chucked a couple of unique flasks in there as well. We have Rumi's Concoction and Dying Sun, which is super nice. And then last of all, we are using one Frozen Trail Cobalt Jewel for our Frostbolt, which we'll talk about just in a second again. And then just some cold damage over time, max energy shield recharge jewels here as well, which is super nice. These do cost a little bit, but it's not going to be too difficult to craft your own with those ones right there. Now, if we're looking at the skills themselves, as I said, we're now actually switching our 6-link to a Vortex and not Spell Slinging. The really interesting mechanic here is you've got Vortex, Elemental Focus, Efficacy, Control Destruction, Swift Affliction, and Hypothermia. And as I talk about this, I'm just going to overlay some video of this right now so you can have a look, because the gameplay is quite a bit different. On Vortex, you want to put this on your left click, and as you're spell slinging your Creeping Frost and Cold Snap as well as Frostbolt. Now, Vortex interacts with Frostbolt in the way that Ice Nova also interacts with Frostbolt. If you're spell slinging with Frostbolt and then also using Vortex on left click, which is proccing every time you left click, those vortexes do not spawn at your base. They actually spawn on the Frostbolts themselves. So it actually creates, as you can see, a massive pool of vortexes across the entire ground. It's actually a really, really great way to clear. If you want to take this and change it around to actually work on the budget version of the build, you can do that as well. It actually does work fairly well, but I like to, on the budget version, just use Creeping Frost. So let's jump back to all of the gear links and everything like that now, and we can have a look at Frostbite and Power Siphon with Curse on Hit, which is pretty nice here. And we actually also, I didn't even put this in here, we also want to put Temp Chains here as well, which is super nice, and chuck that in there. But that is on weapon too, so we do have to find a different way to switch that around, but you can very, very easily just switch something around in the boots here and change the Flame Dash around. Now, the other spell slinger we're going to be using is Cold Snap, Control Destruction, and Efficacy, which is super nice in the gloves. But the other main one in the helmet with the Rhyme Gaze is your Creeping Frost Spellslinger, Bone Chill, and GMP. Now, you can change this to anything that you want. Bone Chill is really nice in Creeping Frost because you get that increased chill effect, but you can also put it in Vortex, but you just want one Bone Chill anywhere that you can, which is super, super nice. Then we have a small little Spellslinger Frostbolt here. All we need is Spellslinger and Frostbolt together, right there like that. And then we're wanting a Frostbomb, Tempest Shield, Immortal Call here. And that is pretty nice in the weapon slot. And that is in the triggered weapon slot as well. So that's just going to be triggered whenever it does need to be triggered, which is super, super nice. Now that's pretty much all. Now, if you can't find a place to put this 4th link here on the weapon, you can get like a Frostbite Curse on Hit on a ring, or Temp Chains or anything like that, Curse on Hit on gloves, Corruption. But you can switch things around if you do need to be able to get that Temp Chains in right there. That's basically all the links for the endgame version. But as I said, I haven't spent as much time on this, so there may be a couple of issues with that. If there is any questions whatsoever, comment down below, come catch me on stream, ask around. This is going to be very, very easy for us to solve or anything like that if you have problems getting through the leveling process with this, but I don't think you will, because it's an extremely strong and cheap build. That's all I have to say for this. Now we're going to jump to the budget and then the end game passive skill trees. Let's jump over now. Welcome back. We are now looking at the skill tree for the budget Cold Slinger. We did go over all the gear before, but now we're going to be talking about the skill tree, the choices that I made, and for this skill tree on the budget, we are obviously going life-based, as you would have seen from the gear as well. You do get a little bit of energy shield as well, which is nice to cap things off, just from the gear that you're taking, but life-based is very much where we sit at. For the Ascendancy, obviously we are going Occultist. Now, Occultist is really nice for that cold damage over time and curses, but we're going to be going into the cold damage over time first with Void Beacon as our normal Ascendancy, and then heading straight into Frigid Wake for our Cruel Ascendancy. Through the leveling process, this is going to feel absolutely amazing and survivable, because you're going to be chilling and freezing enemies like crazy. Even all of the bosses during the leveling process on Spellslinger, you're going to be freezing them with Frigid Wake, which is going to be super nice. For Merciless Lab, we take Profane Bloom, which is extremely nice in any sort of hexproof situation, and also really helps out clear. And then lastly, we're going to be taking Malediction. Malediction allows us to use Temporal Chains, or you can use Elemental Weakness if you would like to for more damage instead of more slow. But Temporal Chains just piles on really nicely with Chill, basically slowing enemies to a really nice halt, which is really great. So that's what we're taking here for the Ascendancy points. For the skill tree itself, you can basically just come straight out of the Witch, pick up some life, but you want to be rushing straight to Elemental Overload, and then after that point you can pick up a little bit more life and then jump all the way over here up into the Breath of Rime. Then you can come straight down here, you can pick up life here, you can come into Growth and Decay, picking up No Witnesses, some more life down here, and picking up everything around here, more life and some damage over time. Then you can jump back over here, and you want to be picking up some reduced mana reservation after that. And then lastly, you can jump in, grab some more life down here, and pick up all of this as well, and then fill in all the gaps. Now, there will be down here, there will be some leveling trees every 20 points to guide you along, helping you with all of that. And there may be a couple of adjustments of coming through here instead of up here, because this is a little bit inefficient of 5 points, but we can also take some points around here to kind of save a couple of things. There may be a couple of variations as well of this, but this is what I found. Now, a lot of people also asking why you're not using cluster jewels. Obviously, being a budget version of the build, cluster jewels can be fairly expensive at the start of League, especially we're not going to have Harvest to be able to craft our jewels. So we don't know how difficult these jewels are actually going to be to craft. And so basically, just for this entire build, I've taken out cluster jewels in any of my starter builds because I don't want people to rely on them and then not be able to get those jewels. It's also solo self-found friendly, so you don't need to rely on getting those jewels and spending hours and hours and hours grinding something to get Delirium and to get the jewels. So cluster jewels are just out with this build. However, if you do want recommendations on cluster jewels, definitely ask me. I can help you with that. But usually it's going to be either curse cluster jewels or cold damage over time cluster jewels as well on the mediums. It's going to be super nice. That's basically the budget version of the tree. Let's jump over to the endgame version of the tree, which is Chaos Inoculation, or CI as people call it. Now, the endgame version of the tree also, obviously, is Occultist, but there is one small change here. Instead of going all the way into Malediction, we are taking Vile Bastion. Now, Vile Bastion is just really helping us with our energy shield per second. Energy shield per second for each enemy you or your minions have killed recently, up to 10 per second, and cannot be stunned while you have energy shield. Now, the cannot be stunned is super nice, being Chaos Inoculation, because usually you get stunned like crazy having only one life, and that's how the damage threshold works. So with the cannot be stunned and also cannot be chilled or frozen here, it's actually super nice for Chaos Inoculation. Obviously we're still taking Void Beacon, Frigid Wake, and Profane Bloom, but this does mean that we don't have the extra curse from Malediction. However, we don't really need it going CI. The tree itself is just basically picking up cold damage over time and Chaos Inoculation, and then getting some mana reservation through all of these parts here as well. So basically we're just coming out of the Witch, getting all of this energy shield here, up all the way through here, and then picking up Elemental Overload and everything like this. Now, there's not actually going to be a leveling tree down here, obviously for ES, because you're going to be transitioning from ES. This is the endgame version of ES, that you're going to be transitioning from the previous skill tree. So there are definitely both of the path of buildings down below, but if you're just leveling this character, you want to start with the life-based budget version and then transition into this build. I don't have a guide right now on how to actually transition, but what you can assume is if you put all of your gear into this version of the tree, your own energy shield gear that you've crafted, if you have at least 7,000 energy shield, you are good. Transition. If you have below 7,000 energy shield, do not transition the character. Stay life-based until you gather enough gear to transition you to 7,000 energy shield. So that's pretty much it. So you don't really need to worry about, the actual path that you take through all of this, because this is how everything is going here. Now, I do have Elemental Equilibrium ticked here, but just depending on whether you're going to be using it or not, if you have cold damage to spells on your weapons or any of your gear, do not take Elemental Equilibrium. If you don't, then you can use this and proc it with something like a Storm Brand or something like that. That's definitely a really, really good thing to do. But that is basically it. You get 217% increased energy shield from the tree, which is super, super nice. And then we've just got our Frostbolt Jewel over here as well, which you do get through the leveling process. So that's pretty much all you need there. Next, we're going to jump to the leveling process, the kinds of gems that you're going to be taking through the leveling process, and when you're going to be taking them. Now, myself, I can basically get this build to Act 10 or finishing Act 10 in just over 4 hours is what I've tested myself. So if you know what you're doing, it's extremely quickly and can be run on par with those best leveling builds out there. So without further ado, let's jump to the leveling process. In Act 1, there's quite a few specific gems that we will be using through the leveling process. So, first of all, we're going to have a look at that. Most of them you get through quest rewards, but you can also purchase them from Nessa as well. To start off with, before you get to level 12 and get your Creeping Frost, you're going to be just starting with Freezing Pulse, and then you're going to have linked with Arcane Surge, and then you can collect cold damage as well right before Brutus, which is super nice there. You then also want to pick up Frost Bomb, and then you can also link that with Spell Cascade just to be able to land it on bosses and hit bosses a lot easier. Now, after all of that, you are going to be leveling up. As I said, you're going to get Creeping Frost at level 12, and you want to be linking Creeping Frost with Volley and added cold damage. So you're wanting 2 green, 1 blue links, which is pretty easy to get in the leveling process. Now, the reason we have added cold damage, you might be thinking, well, it's cold damage over time. Why are you using added cold damage to start with? The reason is actually being early game, the initial hit of Creeping Frost is very strong, and it can actually shotgun. If you aim Creeping Frost at the bottom of the feet of any of the bosses, if you're using something like Volley and added cold damage, that can shotgun and actually hit the enemy 3 times, which is super, super nice. So I suggest using added cold damage early. You can then also pick up a Wintertide brand to supplement your damage if you would like to here. I very much tend to do this. In terms of movement skills, you're going to be getting Frost Blink to begin with, but that's easily just going to be switched to Flame Dash once you kill Brutus. And you can also pick up a Smoke Mine. If you can do some practice with Smoke Mine and Flame Dash together, basically have a Smoke Mine detonation on your left click, throw Smoke Mine in front of you, then detonate, and then Flame Dash as soon as you Smoke Mine. It basically gets you a crazy distance gained, and you also get move speed from Smoke Mine as well. That will really, really help you speeding through the leveling process. But that's Act 1, let's move to Act 2. In Act 2, you're going to want to stock up on alterations because you're going to be buying a couple of gems here that do cost orbs of alteration. First of all, from the quest reward of killing Malagaro, you can either pick up Skitterbots or Herald of Ice. So pick up either one of them and then purchase the other. These two are going to be tying you through until you get Spellslinger, and this is going to be where your reservation goes. Then you can also pick up Cold Snap, again to supplement your damage. If you're not going to be using Cold Snap, you can also just keep leveling it up, because once you start Spellslinging, you're going to want to socket Cold Snap in there, so definitely pick that up. At this point, you're probably going to want to switch your added cold damage with something like Controlled Destruction for your Creeping Frost, because your cold damage over time is going to start to do more damage than your initial hit now. You can also use Elemental Focus as well, and you can pick up another Controlled Destruction for your Cold Snap, or your Wintertide brand or anything like that you would like to there. You can also, if you have a 3 link for your Frost Bomb, you can pick up Faster Casting and link that in there as well, which is going to be super, super nice. Let's move on to Act 3 gems. In Act 3, you're going to be picking up your curse, which is going to be Frostbite. Then you're also going to be picking up 2 Spellslingers. Now, your first Spellslinger is obviously going to be Creeping Frost, linked with Spellslinger, and then your Volley as a 3-link. So you're going to be taking out one of your damage links and putting Spellslinger in there. If you have a 4th link, that's totally fine. You can just slot Spellslinger right in there. And then you're also wanting the second Spellslinger just to be linked with Wintertide Brand and Cold Snap together. And if you've got another 4-link, again, you can put another damage support gem in there like Controlled Destruction, which is going to be super, super nice. That's pretty much all that we're picking up here, but once you're here in Act 3, you do actually want to jump all the way back to Act 1 just to pick up your Power Siphon, which is something you're really, really going to want. So you jump back to Act 1 at this point, and you can talk back to Nessa, you can purchase here, and you can come and grab your Power Siphon, which, if we have a look here, is just going to be right down here. Now, Power Siphon is going to be what we level with. It gets Culling Strike, and we do get power charges as well through that to keep up our Elemental Overload, which is going to be super, super nice as well. But that's it from there. Now we're going to jump to Act 4. In Act 4, you're pretty much just going to be picking up the rest of your skills. Now, if I did miss anything in this leveling process, that is because right now this is just the most important things for the build. So first of all, you are going to be wanting to pick up your Curse on Hit, put your Power Siphon with Curse on Hit, and then link Frostbite onto that, and that's going to be super, super nice for your clear and damage against bosses and everything like that as well. Then you're going to want to pick up Bone Chill. Now, you want Bone Chill either in your Creeping Frost or with your Cold Snap. It doesn't really matter which one, but you want it somewhere because you do get enemies in chilling areas from supported skills take 18% increased cold damage over time, which is super, super nice. Lastly, you can play around with what you like to see in your Creeping Frost. Some people like to use Chain, some people like to use Greater Multiple Projectiles, or you can jump back and get Fork as well, which is super nice to use. I like to use Greater Multiple Projectiles or Fork, but that's pretty much what you're picking up here. Then the more links that you get, you can just add the rest of your gems in. Say, for example, anything like your Steel Skin, you can go just pick up in Act 1 again if you'd like, and also Second Wind, you can go and pick that up in Act 1. That is pretty much it for the gears and links right there. That concludes this small little leveling section. If you have other questions, just come and ask once again, and we'll sort that all out. And there you have it. That is the build guide for Dot the Cold Shoulder, the spell-slinging Creeping Frost Occultist. Again, if you have any questions whatsoever, feel free to leave a comment down below in the description, and if you enjoyed this kind of build guide, hit that subscribe button. It helps a lot more than you think it does. And lastly, come join me on stream if you want to see this build in action, or if you want to talk about any other builds. Until next time, Badger, out.